Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? Tonight's episode asks the question, what's love got to do with it? How can someone who claims to love you abuse, batter, and even murder you? Consider these statistics. Domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women between the ages of 15 and 44 in the United States. More than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. 3 to 4 million women in the United States are beaten in their homes each year by their husbands, ex-husbands, or male lovers. An estimated 1.3 million women are victims of physical assault by an intimate partner each year. 25 to 45% of all women who are battered during pregnancy. Women of all races are about equally vulnerable to violence by an intimate partner. There are 16,800 homicides due to intimate partner violence annually. My guest today is Tammy. She is a victim and a survivor of domestic violence. She is here to share her story of how she overcame the abuse and violence that she suffered. She hopes that her story will serve as a warning to some and a source of hope to others. Welcome to the show, Tammy.
Thank you.
Tammy, let's start dealing with some myths about domestic violence. What would you say to this? Domestic violence occurs only in poor, uneducated, and minority families.
That's very untrue. It happens across the board. I'm not from a rich background, but I've known other people from other backgrounds as well. I'm from a middle-class family. But I've known people that other people that it's affected in every socio-economic group, as you said, race, it affects everyone.
The real problem is couples who assault each other. Women are just as violent as men. What do you say to that?
Well, when mine started, it was, obviously he hit me first, and it was unexpected. I was surprised and, never thought it would happen to me. But as time went on, it was the apologies, oh, it's never going to happen again. But then as it got worse, I started defending myself. It doesn't make me any better hitting him back. Violence isn't good with violence. It only escalates the situation. So I guess it kind of makes me one too, really.
Well, what would you say? I think you answered it in part, that domestic violence is usually a one-time isolated incident.
Never. I don't believe that. I don't, unless if somebody was to hit someone and then they sought out like some kind of counseling or, got help right away, then maybe, that would be the hope for that relationship or those people. But they always say, oh, it's never going to happen again. Beg forgiveness, bring you, whatever, a present, all the apologies in the world, it's always going to, oh, it'll never happen again. Yeah, no, it's not true.
Men who batter are often good fathers and should have joint custody of their children if the couple separate. What do you think about that?
That's a loaded question. I've seen both. I think that's kind of on an individual basis. I can't be the judge of that. I've seen people who've battered their wives and never touched their kids. Doesn't mean it will never happen. Who's to say? But, there should obviously be stipulations if it is happening that he should have to go through some kind of counseling, something to make sure he's not going to hurt the kids. That's really the only way to figure it out.
When there is violence in the family, all members of the family are participating in the dynamic, and therefore all must change for the violence to stop. What do you think about that?
Oh, definitely. Everybody feeds into the whole situation. It's just like an alcoholic. just the person just drinking is not the only one in it. People mask it, people hide it. Just like domestic violence. It's not. I was never proud of it. I tried to hide it too. It wasn't something I went bragging about. The guy that was abusing me was a very charming man. In the first year of our relationship, first year and a half, he treated me like a princess. He put me on a pedestal. He bought me wonderful things, took me all over the place. We got along great. It was a great relationship until the first time.
Tammy, what do you say to this? Battered women are masochistic and provoke the abuse. They must like it or they would leave.
That's not true. Now, I can only speak for myself. Every situation is different, and every woman is different. Every man is different. Like I said, in the very beginning, he treated me great. When somebody treats you great, and you fall in love, and everything's going along great, obviously you build feelings for someone. And then when it happens, obviously you think it's only going to happen one time. So, of course, you want to think the best in someone. I was young. I was in my early 20s. And when you think you're in love and, okay, it's not going to happen again, so, you give them another chance. And then, of course, the span of it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen like boom, 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 boom. But as time goes on, the episodes get closer together. So you get tangled up in it, and it just becomes, it's just one of those things. And it becomes a vicious cycle, and it's not easy to break it. And it's just you're in love with the person, but you can hate them at the same time.
What do you say to this? Men have a right to discipline their partners for misbehaving. Battering is not a crime. What do you say to that?
Well, as anyone I think would say that is false. Anyone that lays hands on anyone it should be considered a crime if anybody. Because there are cases where women abuse men. Women shouldn't abuse men either. Nobody should be abusing anybody.
What is your definition of domestic violence, Tammy?
Putting your hands on someone else, of any form, hurting someone else.
Physically.
Physically
hurting.
But there's mental abuse too. My abuse was physical, but it was also mental. Mental, which I had explained to you as well, was often worse than the physical. When somebody starts degrading you and telling you you're stupid and that no one else would ever love you, and calls you a whore and a slut and accuses you of sleeping around even though you never have, getting hit, not actually hit, but with that person saying these things to you over and over and over, then as well as then getting hit, it wears on your self-esteem and your ego, and you just, and there was a multitude of, this was over almost 30 years ago, but, he had a really sharp tongue. And it took the wind out of my sails, and it wasn't that easy. And plus, they get you away from your family, they get away from all your friends at the time, so they kind of have like a control over you almost. So you're kind of isolated. You really only have them to rely on, so you can't just walk away. It's not that easy.
As you were growing up, did you personally witness domestic violence in your family?
As I thought about that, I do remember one case, and it wasn't a common occurrence. There was only one time, and the thing I got was that my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, I don't really, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and something about, my stepfather and my mother were in the kitchen, and som well, they made up a story that they broke a ketchup bottle. But something about, I think my mother told me later, he was doing something and she hit him in the nose. But and then I never seen anything like that again. So that was the only one-time occurrence that I ever witnessed or heard. But that did come up when I thought about it, when that question came up.
How many domestically violent relationships have you been in, Tammy?
Just the one.
Just the one?
Yeah, one was enough, and it was for, I don't know, I lost track, but it was between 6 and 7 years.
Would you touched on it a little bit, but would you please explain how you ended up in a long-term domestic relationship? You said you get sucked in. What happens, Tammy? How do you get sucked in?
Well, as I said, in the very beginning, you get romanced, and the person's treating you great, wine, dine you, he had a great job. We went out doing a lot of things, friends, meeting a lot of new people. Part of the problem was too that now he was a very charming guy, and he was fine when he drank beer, but if he started drinking the hard stuff, that was the end of it. Now he wasn't just verbally abusive to me. He would at a party and he would start degrading other women verbally, or he'd lash out at his friends a little bit, the guys, but it would be like, the women would be like a target verbally. I don't know what it just triggered something in him, and it just. But then, like I said, when you're in love, you put up with stuff you just wouldn't think you would.
What about drugs and alcohol that play a part? You said the beer and the hard stuff. Drugs?
Yeah, oh yeah. And then, so the more, and at the time being young and all that, drinking and partying. And so then we got, so the more you could drink, so obviously then we all started doing cocaine. So when you do cocaine, then you could step so you could drink longer and socialize longer in the parties and all that. I don't know if that really affected his temper. It was really the hard liquor that made him violent.
You talked about one New Year's having 2 black eyes.
Yeah, and that was strictly because of us being out and I tried to remember what led up to, and I really don't, but I know we were out to a party, came back to the apartment, and he obviously had been drinking and hit the hard stuff, and whatever triggered his temper. There was me, the punching bag. But like I said, I got to a point in the very beginning I didn't fight back, but then I wasn't going down, without a fight. So I did fight back.
You tried to defend yourself?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. He had hands like baseball mitts, and he was like 6'3". So he was a big guy.
How were you able to hide such things from your family?
Well, being in that relationship, like I said before too, you kind of, you're ashamed for one. I was ashamed of that I even let it get that far, that I let somebody do this to me. Then you have the verbal stuff, thrown at me, so I feel less than. So I don't really want to talk to my family. It was just like pulling back and pulling away. But, I just kind of disassociate. There was times when I did say to myself, this was enough, and like move back home for a little while. But then he would come back. He would come to my mother's house and beg my forgiveness, and it's going to be better, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that's where I got sucked in.
You love this guy.
Yeah. But it was a vicious cycle, and I didn't know how to break out of it truly. It just And when you're young and in that vulnerable state, and when you don't really have like a really long-term relationship, my mother was married several times. I never really had a strong male adult role model in my life. I didn't think that helped. My mother, looking back, was not, I mean, I love my mother, but she, by no means, she had a lot of her own issues. She never took responsibility for anything. Everything was always everybody else's fault. Mm-hmm. So when you have all of these culminations of things looking back to me, I can kind of see where I ended up in this relationship. I mean, because I'm able to look back and now understand. Whereas when you're in it, you know, you don't understand that.
Have you forgiven your abuser?
My abuser is since passed away. He died of a brain tumor. I actually went to his memorial to see his family. Yeah, I actually did that day.
Was that a sense of relief for you to let it go?
Oh yeah. And I wasn't perfect in this whole thing either. I mean, he wasn't the only one. You know, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. I mean, this is my version. I mean, he might have a different one, but you know, but I'm by no means perfect. And but for anybody that has somebody lay hands on them, don't let it happen again. Once is too much.
You spoke of being addicted to the relationship.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Love doesn't hurt. But when you're young and you think you think you can change somebody too. You think they're going to change for you. They promise they're going to change for you. Unless you're going to go to counseling and really work at a relationship, they're not going to change. But you know, when you're young and starry-eyed, and you know, you think you have this person that's, you know, keeps saying they love you and they're going to take care of you and all these things, and you really want to believe it, you know.
What saved you? What pulled you out of that relationship, Tammy?
Well, when I scared myself so bad because one night I just couldn't take it anymore. He came home in one of his drunken stupors, and he didn't hit me. It was just some of the verbal abuse and whatever. He went to bed, and I was just so overwhelmed. I mean, I was drinking too, just to deal with it. I'm surprised I didn't become an alcoholic out of it, really. I could have very easily, but I didn't. And he went and passed out, and I was just so fed up. I just was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I stood in the doorway with a cast iron pan that my mother had given me. Mm. And I looked at him, and I was going to go in there, and I was going to bash his brains out. Because I just couldn't take it anymore. I just was like, I was just going to just do it. I was like, but then, as I had it in my hand and wanting to do it, I said, that's not it. This is not the way. I put it down, and I left.
You have a daughter?
Yes, I have a beautiful daughter.
Have you passed on your experiences to her?
Yes, she knows I was in an abusive relationship. I don't think I've ever really gone through all the specifics, actually, but she knows. You know, she's more than welcome to watch this. I mean, it's not, I would never hide anything from her. She'll be 28 this year, so. But I will say that I brought up my daughter to be a very strong, independent young woman because I was not going to have her ever go through anything like this. Because she was told how smart she was and how beautiful she was, and she exceeded that immensely because she's just doing phenomenally well in her life.
What would you say to young women in not so young women watching who find themselves trapped in these relationships. What advice would you give them, Tammy?
Find somebody to talk to, a friend, a pastor, somebody in your life that can help you get out of it. Do what you can. Put a little bit of money aside. And if you're because I know a lot of women, happens where they have no financial way to leave. There are ways to do it. There's more agencies out there now too. What is it, like 311 or something you can call, and they can help you find. Don't stay in it, because you'll die, or you'll kill him and then you'll end up in jail. It's not worth it.
What would you say, Tammy, to yourself as a woman today that you couldn't say to yourself back then when you were being abused? Who is the Tammy today?
That I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was, and I am worth it. I didn't think I was back then.
You feel you're worth it now, Tammy?
Yeah, I have a good husband who helped me realize that after the relationship. I met him after I had left my abuser, and he helped me build up my self-esteem and my self-worth, and see that I am worth something. Yeah.
What gave you the courage to come and do this show?
My spiritual beliefs and wanting to help other people, just wanting to reach out, and I feel that we should all try to help each other in whatever way we can. Sure. That was really,
Good. Are you a victim of domestic violence? Is your partner threatening or violence towards you or the children? Do you find yourself making excuses or minimizing your partner's behavior? Do you feel completely controlled by your partner? Do you feel helpless, trapped, alone, and isolated? Do you blame yourself for the violence? Does your partner blame you and tell you that you are the cause of all his problems? Do you blame the violence on stress or drugs, alcohol, or a bad childhood? Does your partner constantly accuse you of having affairs when he can't account for 100% of your time? Does he tell you that he is jealous of you? Do you fear going home? Are you limited in your freedom like a child, going to the store, going out for even 15 minutes? Do you find yourself lying to hide your partner's real behavior? For example, saying you fell down the stairs when actually you were pushed. Are you embarrassed or humiliated by your partner in an effort to control your behavior, especially in public? Does your partner abandon you, leaving you places or lock you out? Does your partner hide your keys, mail, or other important papers? It's not your fault. Call 911 immediately. Tell somebody. Contact the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence at 912 Silestein Highway, lower level. The phone number is 860-282-7899. That's all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, Tammy, for sharing her story. Thank you for tuning in. Our stories are as different as each snowflake and are as beautiful and numerous as the stars. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.